It was a warm and tranquil autumn afternoon in Baker Street, the kind of day when London seemed wrapped in a golden haze. The smoke of the city hung lazily above the roofs, and the cries of the newspaper boys below drifted up through the open window of our sitting room at 211B. Holmes reclined upon the couch, his long, thin fingers steepled before him, his gaze fixed on the ceiling with that peculiar intensity that told me his mind was engaged upon some intricate chain of thought. I, for my part, had been attempting to occupy myself with a medical monograph that, though my attention strayed frequently toward my companion, there is, to the student of human nature, no more fascinating subject than Sherlock Holmes when he is thinking. His silence is eloquence itself.
My dear Watson, you have turned that same page thrice in as many minutes. Either your author is intolerably dull, or you are preoccupied with my inertia.
You have me there, Holmes. I confess that I find the latter to be far more diverting. I was merely wondering whether the day will bring you a case worthy of your powers.
Cases, my dear fellow, are like the tides of the Thames. They come in floods and then recede to a mere trickle. For the past week, it has been nothing but trivial domestic grievances, lost brooches, wayward husbands, and a fellow convinced his neighbour's cat is a disguised spirit of vengeance.
I dare say even you might find that last one stimulating in its eccentricity.
Only as a study in human delusion. Still, I have a sense, a peculiar premonition, that something weighty is about to break upon us.
You astonish me, Holmes. On what do you base that intuition?
On nothing more substantial than the pattern of the post. Observe, Watson, the morning letters contain 3 inquiries of minor theft, and one from a lady who fears her husband spends too much time at his club. Yet this,
Holmes reached toward the mantelpiece, where Mrs. Hudson had placed a freshly delivered card upon a tray.
This, my dear Watson, is no ordinary visitor. Look at the engraving.
Mr. Neil Gibson, I read aloud, former United States Senator.
Precisely. The name, if I'm not mistaken, belongs to the man once known as the Gold King, one of the wealthiest citizens of the New World. When such a man calls upon Baker Street, it is seldom to discuss trifles.
Shall I ask Mrs. Hudson to show him up?
By all means. And Watson, keep your eyes open. Wealth seldom travels unaccompanied by tragedy.
Moments later, the door opened to reveal a tall, broad, shouldered man whose very bearing suggested authority. His hair was grizzled, his face bronzed by the sun, and his eyes shone with that fierce light of purpose so often found in men who have fought their way upward through struggle and fortune.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, thank you for receiving me at such short notice. I am a man sorely troubled and in need of the keenest brain in Europe.
You flatter me, Mr. Gibson. Pray take a seat and tell us what shadow lies upon you.
It is murder, Mr. Holmes, a vile and incomprehensible murder that has left my household in ruins. My wife is dead, and the woman I love stands accused of killing her.
Good heavens, that is indeed grave.
Compose yourself, sir. Begin at the beginning and omit nothing, however trifling it may seem. Truth, like a chain, is only as strong as its weakest link.
They were. You may have heard of Thor Place, my estate near Winchester. It was there that my wife, Maria Gibson, met her death 10 days ago. The weapon was my own revolver, found beside her body on the bridge that crosses the lake in our grounds. The bullet struck her through the brain.
The bridge. You say it is called Thor Bridge?
Aye, sir. An old stone affair dating from the time of my forebears. It has seen many a tragedy in its years, though none like this. The police have arrested Miss Grace Dunbar, my children's governess, and the evidence, I regret to say, appears black against her.
Appears, Mr. Gibson? Then you yourself entertain some doubt of her guilt?
I would stake my life upon her innocence. Holmes, that woman is as pure as driven snow. Yet the authorities will not listen. They say jealousy drove her to the deed, that she was infatuated with me, that my wife discovered our affection and reproached her, and that in a moment of passion she fired the shot.
And what say you to these allegations, sir?
Lies, every one. I am not blind, Dr. Watson. Then I know that my conduct toward Miss Dunbar may have been indiscreet. The piece, I admired her intellect, her spirit, her nobility of character. She alone could soothe my turbulent temper. But I swear to you, our relationship was as innocent as any friendship could be between man and woman.
That, Mr. Gibson, is a statement of sentiment. The law deals in facts. Tell me, what evidence do they hold against her?
The youngest, they say, is a letter she wrote to my wife the morning of the tragedy. It was found in my wife's room after her death.
And its contents?
It begged for a meeting that evening upon the bridge, for the sake of the children, it said. My wife went, and never returned alive.
A summons to a secret meeting, followed by the discovery of the body at that very spot. A most damning coincidence indeed.
Was there no sign of struggle, Mr. Gibson?
None, doctor. The police found her lying as if struck down without warning. Elma! Her wedding ring had slipped partly from her finger, and there was a small bruise upon her wrist, but no other marks.
And the revolver, you say it was yours?
Yes, from my own study. It was kept in a drawer, which I found unlocked the next morning. Police believe Miss Dunbar took it before her meeting with my wife.
Yet she denies this, of course.
With all the passion of innocence, she declares she never handled it.
Curious. And this meeting, was there any witness who saw either lady upon the bridge?
Only the coachman who drove my wife to the edge of the grounds. He heard the shot a few minutes after she dismissed him.
And the time of death?
The doctor fixed it around 11 o'clock.
I see. And you, Mr. Gibson, where were you at that hour?
In my library writing letters. Several servants can attest to my presence there.
Very good. Tell me more of Miss Dunbar. What manner of woman is she?
English by birth, well educated, of quiet strength and gentle dignity. Dignity! She came to us from a respected family fallen on hard times. My children adore her.
And your wife? And your wife?
Maria was auburn of the temperament, proud, passionate, jealous beyond reason. Our marriage had become a battleground long before this tragedy. I will not speak ill of the dead, but she was a woman who could turn love to hate in a breath.
That is sufficient, sir. The dead are beyond reproach, but their tempers may cast long shadows on the living.
Holmes, do you believe Miss Dunbar innocent?
I believe nothing until I see. But I confess, Watson, there is a discordant note here. The simplest explanation is seldom the true one. A woman of refinement does not lure her rival to a midnight meeting and shoot her with her employer's own weapon.
Then you will take the case, Mr. Holmes?
With pleasure. The problem presents features of singular interest. Watson, pack your bag. We leave for Winchester by the afternoon train.
At once, Holmes.
God bless you both. If you can save Miss Dunbar, you shall have the gratitude of a man who has lost nearly all that makes life bearable.
Save your thanks for the end, Mr. Gibson. When we reach Thor Place, I shall want access to the bridge, your house, and the prison where the lady is held.
Shall all be arranged.
He rose, bowed, and left us with the air of one who carried the weight of the world upon his shoulders. When the door closed, Holmes sprang to his feet and paced the room, his face alight with the keen fire of pursuit.
Watson, my dear fellow, here we have one of those rare puzzles where logic and emotion wage equal war. A jealous wife, a letter of appointment, a weapon found beside the corpse, yet something in that man's story reeks of improbability.
You suspect some deeper plot then?
I suspect that what seems simplest may conceal the most cunning artifice. Mark my words, Watson, there is a hand in this affair that we have not yet seen.
As always, Holmes, I am at your side. I only hope the lady is indeed as innocent as Mr. Gibson believes.
If she is, Watson, we shall prove it, not by sentiment, but by science. Prepare yourself. The countryside of Hampshire waits, and with it, the problem of Thor Bridge.
Thus began our journey into one of the most curious and tragic cases that ever engaged the talents of Sherlock Holmes. I little knew, as the train steamed southward that evening, why southward that evening, that the old stone bridge over the lake would soon reveal a secret as subtle as any that ever passed through that great brain of my friend and master in detection. The journey from London to Winchester was made under a sky the color of burnished pewter. As our train sped through the autumn countryside, I found my thoughts divided between sympathy for the unfortunate governess and admiration for my companion, whose restless mind was already at work, turning and probing every detail of the case as a jeweler studies a flawed diamond.
Watson, There are certain peculiarities about this affair which already suggest the hand of the extraordinary. The letter to the wife, the weapon at the scene, and the absence of any eyewitness, all these form a pattern that does not entirely satisfy me.
You think the police too hasty in their conclusions?
My dear fellow, they are bound by appearances. We, on the other hand, are bound by truth. Truth seldom travels the road of appearances.
Then you believe Miss Dunbar innocent?
I believe only that the case is more complex than it seems. Innocence and guilt are but words. My task is to discern which is which by the light of logic. In
Logic, yes. But I've often seen you guided by something keener than logic. Holmes' intuition.
intuition, Watson, is merely the subconscious application of experience. A trained mind sees unconsciously what others overlook consciously.
The rhythmic clatter of wheels upon rails filled the silence that followed. When at last we arrived at Winchester, we were met by a servant bearing the livery of Thor Place, who conducted us through the winding country lanes to the Gibson estate.
Thor Place lay upon a gentle rise overlooking a great, still lake whose surface mirrored the grey heavens above. The house itself was of red brick, vast and imposing, its windows staring like solemn eyes across the water. Even before we entered, I felt the brooding atmosphere of tragedy that seemed to hang over it.
A fine estate. Yet the air of happiness does not dwell here. Observe the drawn curtains, the hushed servants, the silence that pervades the very gravel underfoot.
It feels like walking into a tomb.
Precisely. And somewhere within that tomb lies a clue to life, the life of truth, which we must resurrect.
We were shown into a sombre drawing-room where Mr. Neil Gibson awaited us. His face bore the marks of sleepless nights, yet his manner was impatient, as though he wrestled against the very slowness of time.
Oh, gentlemen, I cannot tell you how I have awaited your arrival. The police have done their work, if such it may be called, but they see only what condemns Miss Dunbar. I beg it will look for what might save her.
That is precisely my purpose, Mr. Gibson. But before I see the lady herself, I wish to examine the place of the tragedy.
As you will. I shall have my man bring lanterns. The light is poor at this hour.
That will not be necessary. I prefer to see the scene by the same light under which the crime occurred.
We crossed the gardens in silence, the chill of the evening deepening as we neared the lake. A faint mist rose from the water, blurring the outlines of the distant trees. In the fading light, Thor Bridge stretched before us, an arched stone structure with an iron balustrade, old and weather-stained, spanning the narrowest part of the lake.
There, upon the parapet, I could still discern the dark stain where blood had dried into the stone. A shiver passed through me as I realized that the tragedy had occurred precisely where we now stood.
Remarkable. The bridge is narrow, perhaps 4 feet across, and commands a full view of the water below. The parapet is of solid masonry, about 3 feet high.
The spot seems too exposed for a secret meeting, Holmes.
Just so, Watson. The choice of such a place argues either desperation or deceit.
Holmes stooped and examined the ground with his magnifying lens. His keen eyes missed nothing. The prints of boots upon the damp gravel, the faint scuff of a heel, the rust upon the iron rail.
Observe, Watson. The soil here is soft from recent rain, yet the impressions are confused. The police have trampled over them thoroughly. The eternal enemy of observation is official enthusiasm.
Can you distinguish anything useful?
Barely, though here, just at the edge, note this small, round depression. It is not a footprint, yet it has sharp edges, as though some heavy object struck the ground and was withdrawn.
Perhaps the revolver, when dropped?
Perhaps. Yet the weapon, by all accounts, was found lying beside the body on the parapet, not below it. Curious, Watson. Curious indeed.
He walked slowly along the bridge, tapping the parapet with his cane. his sharp profile etched against the misty lake. Then he paused and bent over the stone at the very centre of the bridge.
Look here. See the slight indentation upon the coping. Something has scraped it recently. And note this short strand, no longer than an inch, caught in the roughness of the stone.
It looks like a piece of twine, or perhaps thread.
Silk, rather. A strong, thin strand, possibly from a cord or ribbon. And yet, why should such an object be here, upon the parapet, beside a scene of death?
It may have caught from the lady's dress. Ah,
Possibly, but I do not think so. You see, Watson, silk does not easily tear unless subjected to a sudden strain. The question is, what exerted that strain?
you speak in riddles, Holmes.
The world, my dear fellow, is a riddle, and this bridge holds one of its finer enigmas.
Holmes straightened and gazed thoughtfully across the lake. The last light of day glimmered on the still surface like burnished steel. For a long while he was silent. Then he turned abruptly.
Come, Watson, I have seen enough here for the moment. Let us speak with the prisoner.
The governess, Grace Dunbar.
Yes, there is a truth written upon the human face which no document can rival. I must read it for myself.
We returned to the house, where a carriage awaited us for the short journey to the Winchester gaol. The governor of the prison received us courteously and led us through echoing corridors to a small stone-walled room. There, seated by a narrow window, was Miss Grace Dunbar.
She rose as we entered, and I confess that my heart was touched by her quiet dignity. She was young, perhaps 25, with noble features and eyes that met ours without fear, though shadowed by sorrow.
Mr. Holmes, I am deeply grateful that you have come. I have no hope save in you.
You may set your mind at ease, Miss Dunbar. My purpose is to seek truth, not to pass judgment. Tell me, in your own words, all that happened upon the evening in question.
There's little to tell, sir. Mrs. Gibson and I had not been upon good terms for some time. She was a proud woman, and her jealousy made life almost unbearable. I wrote to her that morning, begging for an interview upon the bridge that night, in the hope of persuading her to be more just to me, and for the children's sake.
You wrote that letter voluntarily?
Entirely so. It was the only way I could appeal to her without a scene before the servants. I asked her to meet me at 11, and is being.
And you kept the appointment?
Yes, but she did not come. I waited 10 minutes, perhaps more, and then returned to the house. I swear to you, I heard no shot, saw no one, and knew nothing of her death until the morning.
You did not carry a weapon?
Certainly not. I had never even seen Mr. Gibson's revolver until they produced it before me in court.
You had no quarrel with her that day?
None beyond the usual tension. She accused me of influencing her husband against her, which I denied. I respected her position, however difficult she made it.
One last question, Miss Dunbar. Did Mrs. Gibson know of your affection for her husband?
After a pause, I have never spoken of affection, Mr. Holmes, but I did care for him as a friend, a protector of the children, and as a man whose life was poisoned by unhappiness. If that be guilt, I am guilty of it.
Thank you, Miss Dunbar. You have been frank. I ask you to trust me further by keeping silent concerning what we have discussed. I may have to make certain tests at Thor Bridge tomorrow, and for that I require no interference.
You believe there is hope for me, sir?
There is always hope where reason holds the torch.
When we left the prison, the night had deepened and the moon shone pale through drifting clouds. Holmes walked with long strides, his face set and thoughtful. I knew the signs well. He was upon the scent. Yet he spoke not a word until we reached our lodging at the inn. There he flung himself into a chair, lit his pipe, and stared into the fire with that curious abstraction which always heralded some leap of his extraordinary intellect.
Watson, there is mischief here of a very ingenious kind. The clue, I believe, lies not in the people, but in the bridge itself. Tomorrow, with daylight, we shall see whether my theory holds water, both figuratively and literally.
You have formed a theory already?
A mere glimmer, no more. But if I am correct, the truth will prove as singular as it is simple. For now, let us sleep, though I confess my mind shall not.
And so the second stage of our investigation ended. As I lay awake that night, listening to the wind whisper through the Hampshire trees, I could not banish from my mind the vision of that lonely bridge, the silent lake, and the shadow of a woman whose fate hung upon the genius of Sherlock Holmes. Dawn broke over Thor Place in a pallid shimmer of silver light. Thin mist still clung to the lake, its calm surface disturbed only by the faint ripple of a waterfowl cutting through the reeds. The house lay silent behind us, its windows shuttered like the eyes of one who has watched too much sorrow. Holmes was already astir when I descended from my room, stood by the garden gate, his tall figure wrapped in a long grey coat, his keen eyes scanning the misty expanse beyond. A small leather satchel lay at his feet, and from his demeanour, I knew that the game was once again afoot.
Good morning, Watson. The air is keen and bracing, an admirable tonic for the faculties. You will find, I think, that this day's work will be instructive to both of us.
You have some plan in mind, Holmes?
A plan, my dear fellow, and an experiment. We shall reconstruct the tragedy of Thor Bridge as it occurred, and by the immutable laws of physics, prove whether Miss Dunbar could be guilty or whether another hand guided that bullet.
I confess, Holmes, that I find your confidence heartening, though I fail to see what can be learned from an empty bridge and a weapon long since handled by others.
That, Watson, is because you still reason from what is told to you, not from what you see. Come, ring the bag, we go to the lake.
We walked together down the dew-sparkled path to Thor Bridge. The morning sunlight broke through the fog, turning the mist into drifting ribbons of gold. The air was fresh with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. The bridge itself loomed before us, solemn and still, as though keeping its secrets beneath its weathered stones.
Holmes set down his satchel upon the parapet and began unpacking a curious assortment of items: chalk, a measuring tape, and a revolver that I recognized as one of his own.
Observe carefully, Watson. The official version is that Miss Dunbar meeting Mrs. This, in Tampa meeting Mrs. Rection. Gibson here, in a fit of jealous rage, produced a revolver, shot her through the head, and allowed the weapon to fall where it was found.
So it has been alleged, yes.
And yet every link of that chain offends reason. A woman, meeting her rival upon a bridge above deep water, would have a far easier means of concealment than to leave the weapon in plain sight. Furthermore, the letter summoning Mrs. Gibson was written in a tone of appeal, not confrontation.
You would suggest that Miss Dunbar was lured here under false pretenses?
Not quite, rather, that both women were victims, one of death, the other of circumstance.
Holmes stooped and examined the parapet once again. The faint scratches and the fragment of silk he had noticed the previous evening were still there, glistening faintly in the morning sun.
The bridge, Watson, the bridge is the key. It tells a story if one listens with the eyes. You will recall the small indentation on the coping. Now, note how it lies exactly opposite the mark of the bullet upon the stonework beside it.
Yes, I see it clearly now. The bullet must have struck the stone after passing through the unfortunate lady's head.
Precisely. And the angle is downward. That alone is most curious, since the victim stood at the same level as her assailant, unless
Unless she was kneeling?
or the weapon was fired without a human hand behind it.
Without a hand, Holmes. You astonish me.
Nothing could astonish me less, my dear Watson. A mechanism, simple yet deadly, might serve where human presence could not. Consider, if one wished to simulate suicide or implicate another, how better than to contrive a pistol to discharge itself after the perpetrator has departed?
You speak of a trap, a device to fire the gun automatically?
Just so. A cord, a stone, and gravity. Those are all the conspirators I require. Observe.
Holmes measured a short length of string, fixed one end to the trigger guard of his revolver, and looped the other about a stone roughly the weight of a clenched fist. Then he laid the weapon upon the parapet, pointing outward over the lake, and adjusted the string so that the stone hung just below the edge of the coping.
Good heavens, Holmes, you mean to show that such an arrangement could discharge the weapon?
Exactly. When the string is severed or burned through, the weight of the stone falls, pulling the trigger. The shot is fired, and the weapon remains upon the parapet, as though dropped from the shooter's hand.
Genius beyond measure. But what of the silk thread you discovered yesterday?
Aha! That, Watson, was the remnant of the very cord which served this devilish purpose. When the pistol fired, the sudden recoil snapped the string, leaving only that fragment caught in the stone.
But who, then, could have prepared such a mechanism? Surely not Miss Dunbar?
Surely not. Her innocence shines the brighter with each discovery. The mind capable of conceiving this contrivance was one driven by jealousy, cunning, and despair.
You mean Mrs. Gibson herself?
The very same. Picture it, Watson. A woman tormented by suspicion, seeing her husband's affections slipping away to another, yet too proud to confront him directly. She resolves to die, but not before casting her rival beneath the same shadow of guilt that has poisoned her own soul.
It is diabolical, and yet it fits the evidence. The letter would draw her rival to the bridge. The gun, fired after her death, would make it appear that Miss Dunbar had slain her and fled.
Just so. The shot heard by the coachman was the sound of a dead woman's vengeance.
Holmes raised the revolver carefully, adjusted the string, and then with a swift movement released the stone. Bayou! It dropped into the lake with a splash, and instantly the sharp crack of a discharge echoed across the water. The pistol jerked upon the parapet and fell back harmlessly, smoke curling from its muzzle.
Amazing. The weapon fired itself.
Elementary, my dear Watson. Mechanism obeys no conscience.
But how did she contrive to fasten it before taking her own life?
Simple. She bound the string to the trigger, arranged the pistol upon the parapet, and then, with deliberate hand, placed the muzzle to her temple. Her death would be instantaneous. Her body would fall away, leaving the weapon to fire moments later when the string gave way. Thus, the illusion of murder is complete.
It is the work of a mind at once brilliant and mad.
A tragedy of intellect warped by passion, Watson. A combination more deadly than dynamite.
You have proven it beyond doubt. Miss Dunbar must be freed.
In due course, my friend. First, we must present our findings to the authorities, complete with demonstration. Gaspar, you may rely upon the magistrate's astonishment.
He smiled thinly, slipping the spent revolver back into his case.
There remains, however, one last verification. You recall the bruise upon Mrs. Gibson's wrist? It was caused by the recoil of the pistol as it discharged. Her own weapon, her own design. That, Watson, will be the final link in the chain.
And when the chain is complete, it would bind no innocent neck.
Precisely. Come, we shall return to Thor Place and inform Mr. Gibson of what manner of woman his wife truly was. It will not be an easy interview.
Few truths ever are, Holmes.
We walked back across the bridge, the morning sun now full upon the lake. A mist had lifted, revealing a scene of tranquil beauty that mocked the dark passions it had concealed. Holmes paused once more at the centre, his gaze thoughtful and far away.
There is a certain irony in it, Watson. The bridge was built to unite the two shores of this lake, to bring together what was divided. Yet it served instead as the stage upon which division reached its cruelest end.
You're thinking perhaps of the human heart, Holmes.
Indeed, the heart is a bridge too, and when it breaks, it drags down all that it supports.
That morning at Thor Bridge remains one of the most vivid memories of my life. To see the great detective at work, reducing the seemingly miraculous to the simplicity of natural law, was to witness genius in its purest form. I could not but marvel at the quiet certainty of his manner, the poise with which he moved from observation to conclusion. And yet, beneath all his brilliance, there was a touch of melancholy in Holmes that day, as though the revelation of human folly had once again cast its shadow across his spirit.
Watson, when reason triumphs, justice is served, but the heart is seldom unscathed.
Thus ended the morning's experiment. We returned to the house where Mr. Phil Gibson awaited us, unaware that the mystery which had haunted his soul was already laid bare upon the cold stones of Thor Bridge. When we returned to Thor Place, the morning had ripened into a clear, cold day. The lake, once shrouded in mist, now glittered beneath the sunlight like polished glass. Yet within the stately house, there remained an air of mourning, of unresolved grief that clung to its walls as stubbornly as ivy. Mr. Neil Gibson awaited us in his library, a chamber as grand as its owner, lined with books bound in heavy leather, their gilded titles glinting in the light of a great fire. He rose at our entrance, his powerful frame seeming somehow diminished by anxiety and sleeplessness.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, what news? You have been at the bridge, I know. Have you discovered anything that can save her?
I have discovered, Mr. Gibson, the truth, and with it the means of saving an innocent life. But before I speak, I must prepare you. The revelation I bring me wound deeply, for it concerns the conduct of your late wife.
Prepared for anything, Mr. Holmes. Nothing could surprise me now.
On the contrary, sir, I think this will. Your wife's death was not the act of another's hand, but of her own.
Starting violently. Her own? You mean suicide? Impossible. The revolver, Miss Dunbar's letter, everything points
to a conclusion which was carefully contrived to appear so. Yes, but evidence, sir, is like a shadow. It must be examined at the angle of the light. Allow me to explain.
Holmes took from his case the revolver he had used in his morning experiment and laid it upon the tar. His fingers, long and nervous, handled the weapon with the ease of one accustomed to the mechanics of death.
This, Mr. Gibson, is a model of your own revolver. It served me well in demonstrating the method by which your wife met her end. May I have your indulgence for a short reconstruction?
Proceed, Mr. Holmes.
Imagine then your wife, her mind tormented by jealousy, her heart consumed by pride. She writes a letter in Miss Dunbar's hand, asking for a meeting upon the bridge. That letter she forges herself, an act requiring both cunning and knowledge of her rival's style.
A forgery, of course. That explains the letter's convenient discovery in her room.
Just so, Watson. Having written it, she places it where it will be found, and so implicates Miss Dunbar from the first. Then, armed with your revolver, she goes to the bridge, her chosen stage.
But why hide the bridge? The best.
Because it was isolated, sir, and because the water below would serve to conceal the apparatus of her plan if it fell away as she intended. She binds the revolver by a thin cord to the trigger, anchors the other end with a stone, and lays the weapon upon the parapet, muzzle outward.
A deadly contrivance indeed.
She then positions herself before the weapon, pressing her temples against the muzzle. The weight of the stone is supported upon the coping of the bridge by the tautness of the cord. When she releases her hand, the strain of the pistol's discharge causes the string to snap, the stone falls into the lake, and the revolver remains behind, still smoking, still damning to the eyes of men, yet fired by no living hand.
In a low voice. Good God, what you suggest
is the truth, sir. Her death was deliberate, premeditated to the last detail. And her aim was not only to end her life, but to destroy Miss Dunbar's in the process.
I cannot believe it. Maria capable of such devilry.
A woman's jealousy, Mr. Gibson, is a flame that burns both her heart and her reason. Her intelligence made her act possible. Her passion made it inevitable. She could not bear to lose what she no longer loved.
It is indeed a grim irony, Holmes, that one so consumed by hatred should die by her own device.
The bruise upon her wrist, Mr. Gibson confirmed it. The recoil of the revolver against her own flesh. No other theory can explain that mark.
Sinking into a chair. My poor wife, my poor misguided Maria.
You have my sympathy, sir. She was a woman to be pitied rather than condemned, and her deed was not the act of evil, but of despair.
And Miss Dunbar, she's innocent then? Entirely?
Entirely, and she shall be free before nightfall. I have already arranged to meet the magistrate at noon for a full demonstration of the mechanism at Thor Bridge. The evidence will be irrefutable.
I am forever in your debt, Mr. Holmes. What must I do?
Do nothing rash. The truth, painful as it may be, will serve best in silence. When Miss Dunbar is released, I counsel you to make amends with dignity, not passion.
You speak wisely, yet I fear she will never forgive me for doubting her.
Women, sir, are more forgiving than men, but they forget less easily.
Holmes's words, though spoken lightly, carried the weight of deep understanding. I saw the proud American's shoulders tremble as he bowed his head in silence. The great Gold King was no longer master of his world, but a man humbled before the truth.
An hour later we stood again upon Thor Bridge. This time the Hampshire magistrate, the local inspector, and several curious servants had gathered to witness the strange experiment that would decide a woman's fate.
Gentlemen, I beg your closest attention. The theory advanced by the police, though plausible, fails upon the mechanical evidence. I shall show you how a revolver can be made to discharge itself after its possessor's death.
With deliberate precision, Holmes repeated the arrangement he had shown me earlier that morning. He fixed the string to the trigger, adjusted the stone so that it hung just below the coping, and then, with a single motion, let it fall.
The crack of the shot echoed across the lake, startling the assembled watchers. The weapon, as before, leapt upon the parapet and then lay still, smoking faintly in the cold air.
Extraordinary. The weapon fired of its own accord.
Precisely, sir. A simple application of leverage and tension, nothing more. But to the untrained eye, the result appears as murder, most deliberate.
And the cord you spoke of, Mr. Holmes, the one fragment found upon the parapet?
Is here. Producing the silk thread, it matches the fibers found at the scene. You may compare them under the glass if you wish.
There can be no doubt. Miss Dunbar must be released immediately.
I am gratified, sir. That reason has prevailed.
The magistrate bowed solemnly and departed to issue the order. The servants murmured in awe, while Mr. Gibson, pale but composed, grasped Holmes's hand with emotion he could scarcely conceal.
You have restored more than a woman's life, Mr. Holmes. You have restored my faith in justice.
Justice, sir, is a stern mistress, but a fair one. See that you honour her by your actions henceforth.
I shall, Mr. Holmes, I shall.
Later that afternoon, we visited the prison once more. Miss Grace Dunbar was led into the governor's office, her face pale and drawn, her eyes shadowed by long suffering. When Holmes told her that she was free, she sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands as silent tears ran between her fingers.
Free? Oh, Mr. Holmes, you cannot mean it.
I mean precisely that, Miss Dunbar. You are cleared of all suspicion. The case against you was an edifice of falsehood, and it has fallen beneath the weight of truth.
How shall I ever thank you? You have given me back my life.
Not I, madam. Only the facts have done so. I merely pointed where they led.
And Mr. Gibson, what will become of him?
That, Miss Dunbar, rests with your own heart. He is a man chastened by grief and guilt. Whether you forgive him is beyond my art to predict.
I should pray for strength to do so.
Holmes inclined his head gravely, and for a moment even he seemed moved. The light from the window fell upon his pale features, softening their habitual austerity.
Oh, come, Watson. Our task here is finished. The world is wide, and there are other mysteries awaiting us. Awaiting us.
Thus ended the case of Thor Bridge, a tragedy of jealousy and pride, resolved by the unerring logic of Sherlock Holmes. As we left Winchester behind us that evening, I could not help but marvel once more at the strange workings of fate and intellect. Holmes sat silent beside me in the railway carriage, his gaze turned toward the fading countryside. The smoke from his pipe curled lazily upward, mingling with the shadows of dusk. At last he spoke, more to himself than to me.
The greatest crimes, Watson, are not born of wickedness, but of the heart. The mind may reason, but the passions command.
You have often said that sentiment is the enemy of deduction, Holmes.
True, and yet were it not for sentiment, there would be no crimes to deduce. Mankind's virtues and vices spring from the same source. We are all victims of our own hearts.
And so, as the train carried us back toward London, I pondered his words. For once, Holmes seemed less the cold logician and more the philosopher. Payne's theme, perhaps, in solving the mystery of Thor Bridge, he had caught a glimpse of that unfathomable mystery which lies within every human soul. It was 3 days after our return from Hampshire that I found myself once more seated in the familiar chin, our comfort of our rooms at Baker Street. The fog of London pressed against the windows like a grey shroud, and the murmur of traffic drifted faintly from the street below. Yet within, the fire glowed brightly upon the hearth, its reflection gleaming upon the polished brass and the scattered litter of newspapers and chemical retorts that marked the peculiar duality of my friend's existence. Holmes was in his dressing gown, stretched languidly across the sofa, a violin resting idly upon his knee. His eyes were half closed, his long fingers tapping absently at the instrument's neck as if seeking some elusive chord. The Thorbridge affair had ended with Miss Dunbar's release as he had predicted. The newspapers, of course, had seized upon the tale with all the fervor of hungry hounds. Genius of Mr. Sherlock Holmes confounds police. The tragedy of the Gold King's wife. A suicide's cunning snare. Such were the headlines that now filled the morning editions. Yet, for all his fame, Holmes seemed curiously indifferent to public praise.
Without opening his eyes, Watson, you are making that infernal rustle again. Either speak or turn the page more gently.
Smiling, forgive me, Holmes, I was merely reading the Chronicle's account of our last case, where they refer to you as the unerring logician.
A poor compliment, my dear fellow. Logic is not unerring, it is merely self-consistent. The flaw lies not in reasoning, but in the reasoner.
And yet, you cannot deny that your deductions saved an innocent woman's life.
True enough, but I sometimes wonder whether justice and mercy are as closely related as we believe. In the Thor Bridge case, justice demanded exposure. Mercy might have preferred silence.
You feel pity for Mrs. Gibson?
I feel understanding. The human heart, Watson, is a labyrinth, one that even I hesitate to enter too deeply. Her intellect devised the plan, but her despair pulled the trigger. She was both the criminal and the victim.
It was a tragedy in every sense.
Indeed, and yet such tragedies are the very fabric of human existence. Remove love, jealousy, ambition. What remains for the moralist to study or the detective to pursue?
You make it sound as though crime were an inevitable consequence of the human condition.
Perhaps it is. Civilization merely refines our vices, disguises them beneath courtesy and convention. But beneath the veneer, the same passions rage as fiercely as ever.
And yet you dedicate your life to mastering those passions through deduction.
Not mastering, Watson, merely understanding. To master them would require something I lack.
Compassion?
With a faint smile, a heart, perhaps, a heart.
You possess one, Holmes, though you hide it behind that cold exterior of a door. I have seen it stir at the sight of suffering too often to be deceived.
Softly. Then you have sharper eyes than most, my dear doctor. But sentiment, you know, is the enemy of observation.
And yet, it is sentiment that makes life bearable. Justice is.
Touché, Watson. You remind me that a man may reason correctly and still miss the essence of truth. Perhaps that is why I value your companionship. You provide the necessary counterbalance to my own deficiencies.
I'm honored, Holmes, though I sometimes feel that I contribute little to your remarkable work.
Nonsense. You humanize it. Without you, my cases would be cold diagrams. With you, they are narratives of living men and women. You give emotion to reason, just as the violin gives music to mathematics.
Warmly, that is kind of you to say.
Not kind, Watson. Accurate.
Narrating, he set down his violin and rose, pacing slowly before the fire. His tall figure cast a wavering shadow upon the wall, a silhouette of intellect in motion. When he spoke again, his tone had softened into one of musing reflection.
The Thor Bridge affair taught me one lesson above all others, that the most elaborate plot is often the simplest in motive. It is not the mechanism of crime that is complex, but the heart that conceives it.
I remember you once told me that from a drop of water, a logician could infer the existence of the Atlantic Ocean.
Quite so. And from a single tear he might deduce a tragedy.
Quietly, you are growing philosophical, Holmes. That is unusual for you.
Perhaps the age of philosophy begins when the chase grows dull. There will come a day, Watson, when neither the clatter of hoofs nor the thrill of deduction will stir me as once they did. Then I shall retire to my bees in Sussex and leave the world to its own enigmas.
You have said so before, but I cannot imagine you idle among hives and honeycombs.
Even bees, my dear fellow, have their mysteries.
Narrating, a comfortable silence followed. Salad! The fire crackled, and somewhere in the street below, a cab clattered over the cobblestones. Outside, the fog deepened into a velvet gloom. Inside, the warmth of companionship held the cold world at bay. Continuing softly, Holmes, may I ask you one thing?
You may ask certainly. Whether I answer is another matter.
Have you never felt, just once, that emotion might lead to truth where logic falters?
After a pause, I have felt it, yes, but I distrust it. Emotion is a treacherous guide. It points north one moment and south the next. Yet I will admit that it sometimes reveals what intellect overlooks.
Then perhaps both are necessary.
Perhaps. A perfect detective, like a perfect man, would unite the reason of the scientist with the compassion of the saint. But such a being has never existed, and nor, I think, ever will.
You sell yourself short, Holmes.
I merely keep to the realm of the possible, my dear Watson.
Narrating, he smiled faintly, then turned once more to the window, his keen profile outlined against the dull glow of gaslight beyond the curtains. I watched him in silence, sensing that my friend's thoughts were far away, perhaps upon the lonely bridge in Hampshire, or upon the face of the woman whose death had so nearly condemned another.
Half to himself. It is strange, Watson. A human life can be ended by so slight a contrivance, a thread, a trigger, a moment's despair. And yet, to unravel the meaning of that act may occupy the keenest mind for days.
That is the paradox of your profession, Holmes. You bring order to the chaos of human folly.
Or try to at least. But I sometimes fear that, in understanding the mechanics of sin, I risk becoming indifferent to its tragedy.
Then let me remind you of Miss Dunbar's gratitude, Holmes. You did more than expose the truth. You restored her life and honor.
Softly, that, perhaps, is some consolation.
Narrating, he took up his violin again and drew the bow gently across the strings. A slow, plaintive melody filled the room, a theme at once mournful and serene. It was as though the music itself were the echo of that lonely bridge, that doomed woman, and the fragile thread upon which her fate had hung. I sat listening in silence, the fire's glow painting the familiar walls in hues of amber and gold. Outside, the city's hum faded into distance, until only the soft voice of the violin remained, weaving its tender lament. After a long pause, Holmes, what shall I title this one when I come to write it?
Laying down the bow. Call it what you will, my dear doctor. But if you seek my suggestion, perhaps the problem of Thor Bridge will suffice. It is accurate, and, like all good problems, its solution lies within the problem itself.
Smiling, then so it shall be written.
And written, Watson, as only you can write it.
Narrating, he resumed his music, and I, my writing. Thus the night passed quietly away, the last embers glowing, the fog deepening, and the clock upon the mantel ticking out the steady rhythm of time. And as I set down my pen, I hewed that. I reflected once more upon my strange and brilliant friend, Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, the reasoning machine with the soul of a poet. Whatever new mystery awaited us beyond that fog-veiled dawn, I knew that together we should face it, as we always had, he with his intellect, and I with my faith. For to follow Holmes was to walk continually upon the edge of wonder, where every clue was a revelation, and every deduction elementary,